Joining us by Skype from Manitoba, James Bezan is the Parliamentary Secretary of the Minister of Defence. In St. John's, Jack Harris is the NDP Defence Critic, and Regina, Ralph Goodale is the Deputy Liberal Leader. Thanks so much for being here, gents. A week ago, James Bezan, Captain Paul Forget gave an update on the mission. I want to show our viewers. Here's what he had to say.
In the contested western city of Ramadi, ISIS has increased its attacks, but Iraqi forces continue to successfully hold their ground. In 3 separate strikes, CF-18 successfully struck an ISIS fighting position and heavy engineering equipment southeast of Mosul, and ISIS fighting positions northwest of Tal Afar, serving to protect Iraqi forces and further degrade ISIS capabilities.
You saw these briefings from Captain Forget saying that we're really successfully pushing back ISIS, especially around Ramadi. Well, it's not true, because a week ago we were supposed to be pushing them back. Now we lost it to Ramadi. Are we losing ground to ISIS here? What's going on?
Well, I'd say, Evan, that as in any war, there's going to be battles, there's going to be ebbs and flows. And this speaks to the larger context of why we're there. We're there to help Iraqi security forces, to train them so that they can be more effective in their fight against ISIS. And unfortunately, Ramadi was lost over the weekend. But it doesn't speak to the larger ebbs and flows in the battle. I think that
why doesn't it speak to the larger ebbs and flows? It seems to.
You know, they definitely concentrated in capturing Ramadi for whatever reasons. Even though the city's in ruins because of the battles that have been taking place there over the last 12, 14 months. It is. I know it's strategic, but it seems to me that they threw a lot of resources at it. Ultimately, we have to continue to support the Iraqi security forces and our coalition partners in training, in doing the air combat support that we've been doing across the region. And ultimately, I believe that we'll see long-term success.
Okay, but can we just, let me stop you there. When we lose a city like Ramadi, it can't reinforce that the strategy we're having is working. I mean, whether it reconfirms the commitment to help of the coalition, that's one thing. But does it reconfirm your tactical ideas here? Is it Air Force enough? Do you need more ground troops? Are you fighting for this? You know, we liberated Ramadi, now we're fighting for it again. Does it reveal to you that maybe the strategy and the tactics involved are simply not working and there needs to be a change?
Well, I think we have been very successful, because if we weren't there, if the coalition had stood by the sidelines as the opposition would have preferred us to do, Baghdad would have been lost last summer. We have gained back a number of other key cities that were under ISIS control. And the Iraqi security forces had a bad weekend, but I think ultimately with command and control and training, advise and assist roles that Canada and our partners are playing with the Iraqi security forces, with the Kurdish Peshmerga and other militia units, that we will allow them to be more effective.
But sir, with all due respect, the facts are contradicting you. First of all, I don't know if this is Iraqi forces had a bad weekend. I mean, I don't know if Ramadi's a serious loss. A lot of equipment was lost allegedly to ISIS, and now the leadership in Iraq is putting Iranian-backed Shiite militants to come take it back. So are we now de facto allied with Iranian-backed Shiites militia?
We're not allies with Iran at all, but we are definitely working with all Iraqi partners that are there, including the Shia militias.
Well, these guys are flying the Hezbollah flag.
Yeah, and that's something that we're not at all comfortable with. Look, we're working with the Kurdish Peshmerga, we're working with the Iraqi security forces, working with the government of Iraq, because that's. But
let's not gloss over it. Sorry, you're interrupting. I'm interrupting you only because the facts matter. We are working to liberate Ramadi. We are working with the Iraqis, and the Iraqis are working with the Iranian-backed Shia militia, which are flying the Hezbollah flag. So we are working with them now. There's no sense denying it.
No, and it's one of those relationships that we say that we're not comfortable with. But I can tell you that in the coalition, the U.S.-led coalition, we have been successful. Overall, we've gained back over 20 to 25% of the populated regions of Iraq. We have seen them lose control of large swaths of territory, and their ability to move overtly because they know that they're going to be targeted by our air task force, whether it's Canadian CF-18 fighter jets or whether it's other coalition partners. And we're going to continue with, and this speaks to the larger issue why we're there. Iraqi security forces, the government of Iraq needs coalition support to help to train their soldiers, to make sure that they have the ability to take the fight to ISIS. Otherwise, it's all going to be lost.
Jack Harris and Ralph Goodale, let me bring you in. Mr. Harris, what do you make of the loss of Ramadi and what signal this sends?
Well, I think it says a couple of things. You alluded to them, obviously, but there's been 6,000 airstrikes since last June. And clearly ISIS is not in retreat. So the fact that they were able to take Ramadi with 500 fighters shows that they do have capabilities. They got more equipment. They took over more activity. But the second thing that it reveals is pretty obvious when you listen to Mr. Bezan talk about this. The government is going out of its way to turn a blind eye to the realities of what's happening on the ground in Iraq. The Iraqi government, led by the Shias, is totally dependent upon the Shia militias, which are led by Iranian commanders. We've got the Iranian government today making statements that they're going to work very hard to support them. That's been the problem in Iraq for the last 8 years under the leadership of a Shia government. Had no concern for the Sunnis. In fact, there's all sorts of problems, which was why they had to get rid of that leadership and left the vacuum that created ISIL. There's concern in Ramadi if the 3,000 Shia militias outside take it over, that the Sunnis are more afraid of the Shias than they are of ISIL. And then we're helping the Kurdish Peshmerga. We know what their agenda is. They want a Kurdish state.
But Mr. Harris, what's the answer to Mr. Bezan's question, which is if you don't stop them, they'll take Baghdad?
But we're being blind to all the realities, and the position that was taken by the Americans before the beheadings took place and Mr. Obama was forced to act, was that there was no military solution in Iraq. There was only a political solution with the Iraqi government, and people should be working hard to solve that.
We all wish there was a political solution. But hang in there.
That hasn't happened.
Answer the question. I mean, we all wish there was a political solution. The problem is there's a war going on. There's a security problem.
Well, there's a war going on.
How do you stop ISIS from taking Baghdad?
Because there's 6,000 bombings taking place, and that's being used by ISIL to recruit worldwide and to build up their forces.
Saying you're blaming the coalition for the war, sir?
What I'm saying is that the success, the Western countries' strategy in Iraq, in Libya, has not helped the situation, in Syria for that matter, where we defied any political solution. Canada walked away from that. Libya was a situation where the vacuum was created, went beyond the UN mandate, and so those solutions haven't proven to be able to work. We're continuing with those same approaches, and the question that has to be asked is this strategy working? Is it going to work? And I think the answer increasingly becomes obvious that we don't understand what's going on there on the ground, and we don't have a solution with bombs.
Ralph Goodale, I mean, what's your take? The government says, look, yeah, big setback, but if we don't help the Iraqis, ISIS keeps marching ever forward. The other side says the current strategy is not working because whatever people tell us, they're still marching forward. Where are you on all this?
Well, we all share the abhorrence of ISIL and the evil that it represents. The question has been from the very beginning: what is the most effective way? What is the highest and best use of Canadian resources to try to make a material difference? As we look at the events of the last month or so, about a month ago, the friendly fire incident that tragically took a Canadian life. And then more recently the loss of Ramadi, one must ask the question, is the training that we are doing being effective? How come that friendly fire incident took place? How come the forces or the effort that was put into Ramadi was not successful? the government seems to be riveted primarily on the bombing mission.
But what do you do?
We have always said from the beginning the focus should be on training, on humanitarian relief, and dealing with refugees. And in those measures, we would be more effective on the ground.
I got a minute here. I want everyone to. Mr. Bezan's point was, this is a big setback, but unless we don't help the Iraqis militarily, ISIS won't just take Ramadi. They're 120 kilometers from Baghdad. Then we lose the capital. What's your solution to that?
What it looks like we've had here in the last month is a failure in the training. It has not been sufficiently successful in order to deal with these circumstances. This is obviously a very long-term situation. It could rapidly become the quagmire that the Prime Minister said he wanted to avoid. Rather than Canada dividing its focus, it might be more prudent for the Canadian government to focus on training, put more effort there, as opposed to being preoccupied with the bombing. We have always said from the very outset, focus on the training, focus on the things where Canada can make the highest and best contribution, and clearly the training to this point is not sufficient.
All right, listen, this is a profound discussion, and I know you're all concerned about it. James Bezan, Jack Harris, Ralph Goodale, I appreciate your perspectives on an important debate. And by the way, we'll be having lots more of this. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Coming up.